Minister Philpott and I are pleased to take questions, but wanted to, first of all, comment on the Senate and acknowledge the thoughtfulness that they approach this challenging issue of medical assistance in dying, and thank them for their very considered debates and discussions. They sent us 7 amendments, and we have very thoughtfully considered all of the amendments and have accepted 5 of them and partially accepted another. And with respect to one particular amendment which seeks to remove reasonable foreseeability from Bill C-14, we have had continuing and ongoing discussions about reasonable foreseeability, and the Minister and I are confident that the original language in Bill C-14 strikes the necessary and appropriate balance in terms of medical assistance in dying and balancing personal autonomy and eligibility for medical assistance in dying with the necessary and fundamental protections that need to be in place to protect vulnerable people. We are going to continue to listen to the discussions that are happening in the House around this piece of legislation, and again, we'd like to thank the Senate for their thoughtful considerations and recognize that this is a transformational step for our country, and Bill C-14 presents the right balance, the right solution for our country now, and I am confident in its constitutionality and look forward to our continuing discussions as a country on this really important issue.
Thank you. And I want to say that as a family doctor, I was trained to always look at the issues that were in front of me from the perspective of the patient. We talk about a patient-centered approach. And so now, as the Minister of Health, I look at issues like the one that we're facing today from the perspective of Canadian people. What does something like this mean in the lives of Canadians? And one of the reasons this bill has been of such interest to Canadians is it's because it's something that we can all relate to, and every Canadian considers what they want the end of their life to look like. And so we're very pleased with the fact that this legislation, we think, strikes the balance that we've been looking for, that it will offer Canadians one of the things that they've been asking for, and that's the opportunity to have medical assistance in dying. And as we've considered these very important amendments from the Senate, we have appreciated the conversations we've had through the amendment process with them. We've been able to support the large majority of the amendments that they've put forward. There is one in particular that we have not been able to support, and again, the reasoning behind that goes back to our responsibility as government, our responsibility to look to people and to look to, in particular, in this case, vulnerable people, and feeling that the extraction of the language around the proximity of death, the reasonable foreseeability of natural death, is something that is not appropriate at this time. And we believe that the balance that was struck in the original legislation provides that protection for vulnerable people.
Minister, this amendment on the proximity of death was one of the most important amendment by the Senate. And they've told you that if this is not in the bill, they might refuse the bill. So I'm just wondering, how concerned are you that by refusing this amendment, your bill could be jeopardized and maybe just refused by the Senate?
Well, I mean, again, I wanted to highlight and acknowledge the thoughtful nature that the senators have approached this issue and the thoughtful manner in which they have put forward amendments. Again, to be clear, we are confident in the balance that we have drawn in terms of Bill C-14. There are multiple purposes or objectives that are contained within C-14, certainly to provide medical assistance in dying to those persons whose death has become reasonably foreseeable, but to ensure that we also put in place and respect the value of life, protection of the vulnerable, ensuring that we do everything we can to, on suicide prevention. These are the multiple purposes of our legislation.
The Senate sent you a message that if this is not in the bill, they might vote against C-14. So how concerned are you that this could happen now?
Well, I certainly respect the Senate, as I said. We are confident that this is the right approach to medical assistance in dying in this country right now. We look forward to continuing to hear some of the debates. This is and has not, this hasn't been an easy discussion. This is a complex issue. We've heard from thousands of Canadians from a diversity of perspectives, and we're confident that this is the right approach and for our country at this time.
But what's your message to senators who are saying we're going to vote against this bill if government doesn't accept the extraction of the language? What do you say to them?
Well, this is a dialogue, in essence, between the House of Commons and the Senate, and they put forward that amendment. There was further conversation after that, and now it's our turn to respond to that. Through this process of the dialogue, a number of issues have come forward, and I know the senators have considered them all thoughtfully. One of the realities is that we ought to have federal legislation in place as soon as possible. We recognize that the situation we are in is a situation without a federal legislative framework. We know that there will be access issues. There already are, as cases that you've seen as recently as this week. A study that was reported today of doctors emphasizes the fact that 90% of doctors do not feel that the provincial guidelines are sufficient to be able to give them protection to move forward. And we realize that the Senate is aware of that as well, and we hope that they will recognize that it's important that we get the legislation in place, and it's our desire, and we will be happy to have conversations with any of them that as we return it to them. Qu'est-ce que vous
Qu'est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire sur la nécessité d'avoir une loi rapidement?
Le problème maintenant est qu'il n'y a pas de loi fédérale en place pour la protection des personnes vulnérables, ni même pour assurer que les gens qui ont besoin de l'aide médicale à mourir auront cet accès qu'ils désirent. Et c'est pour ça que c'est nécessaire, aussitôt que possible, que le projet de loi avance.
On pill prices, Minister, is the federal, unrelated, the federal government, are they considering a ban on pill prices because they have led to overdoses in British Columbia?
A ban on... Yeah, I have to actually get in there and speak in 2 minutes, so if I can defer that to another time, that would be great.
Flexible at all on the Serge Royal amendment? I mean, if it goes back there and say they dig their heels in, are you willing to say something, for example, well, look, we don't like it, but we'll study it down the road or something?
Well, I mean, again, on the reasonable foreseeability, we worked very hard to achieve the balance, and we need to have the necessary safeguards in place if we were to even consider broadening a regime. I know that there was an amendment that was put forward to further study. I mean, there's work and discussions that are going to certainly continue on medical assistance in dying in this country, not just simply discussions around the 3 studies that are articulated in the legislation, but discussions broadly. And as a country, as a government, we can't back away from those discussions and recognize that Canadians have been invited into this discussion on this really complex issue, and it's our responsibility, and we take it seriously to continue to support those discussions.
Bill die on that?